I will start.
Oh,
Um, Thanks for coming. This is the Tadwig 2026 working sessions. This is the first of two sessions for the Tadwig Earth Sciences and Paleobiology interest group. We will cover the same content in both sessions. They are there for time zone purposes to make sure that we are accessible to a broader array of people around the globe. Thank you for being the people that joined us in the first round of this. So we will work out the details of what we forgot to add or say with the six of you. We do have slides. Do you want,
I'll
Ben, do you
handle that.
want to add anything?
Yeah. No. You may handle the slide part.
Oh, yeah, sure. That'd be
Okay.
good. Great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I put in the chat, I think somebody has joined since I did that, a link to a shared notes document. There's not actually that much that needs to be taken as far as notes go, but there's a section for this particular meeting session. So if you do decide you want to take some notes, please put them there. And as you've already all found, there's a participants section. I think, well, not all of you are on the list yet, but most of you are already on our emailing list, which I forgot to email about this session because we use Slack instead. But I will be sure to update the list with anybody that adds their email address there. Cool. So like I said, this is the Earth Sciences and Paleobiology ESP interest group of Tadwig. Ben and I are the co-conveners of this interest group. But there's a lot of other people that contribute to any work that gets filtered through it. Your
Oh,
Slack
shoot.
window just popped up.
Sorry. It's your messages.
Um, Including Erica. She's gonna be contributing some to what we're sharing with you today. And many of the rest of you have been part of all of the work that we're going to talk about. So if we're missing something, please feel free to chime in. Okay, next slide, please. We're going to go over an intro of what the Earth Sciences and Paleobiology interest group is, our objectives, how you can participate. We're going to talk about a couple of activities of the interest group. They're a little bit parallel, but will filter through the interest group. And then talk about other initiatives that are in alignment with what we're doing in ESP and in Tadwig, but aren't formally part of ESP. Okay. So the objectives of this interest group, we don't necessarily have specific work we're trying to achieve as part of the Tadwig process in the Earth Science and Paleo interest group. We really serve as kind of a coordinating body for sharing information and looking for alignment across projects in the larger Earth Science and Paleo sphere around data. We do have some task groups doing specific things, which Ben will talk about because he's leading one of those. We also kind of serve as a mechanism to have discussions around the implementation of things coming out of Tadwig, or to have discussions like if there's a review back during the public review for the Darwin Core changes last fall, we had a couple of sessions just to go over those as a group to ensure that we're identifying anything that's of particular interest when it comes to Earth Science and Paleo data. Yeah. Ben, do you want to add anything?
I'll talk about my stuff in a bit. Yeah.
Okay. So like I said, we aren't doing specific things, although we do have something that we want to work on with all of you that we're going to share today. We're largely here to help disseminate information and share alignment across our community. So just to plug real quick, later in the meeting, if you have a project that you would like to share that fits in that kind of alignment area, there will be open time to do that. We encourage sharing, so you can think about it now, instead of me putting you on the spot later. If you want to get involved, I already mentioned we have a distribution list. You can put your name and email address in the participants list if you'd like to be on that distribution list. We do not have super regular meetings, although our goal is to meet quarterly. We don't always do a good job at doing that, but that is the aim. You can join the ESP channel in the Tadwig Slack space. It's not super active, but as things come up, we do put things there. There is a ESP GitHub. It's not also not super active. A lot of these spaces aren't super active because we mostly are using these meetings to do that information exchange instead of doing very concerted effort on any particular work. Or you can join one of the parallel groups that we'll talk about at the end. Next slide, please.
Oh, it's my part. All right.
Well,
Awesome.
does anybody,
Oh,
before we jump in,
yes.
does anybody have questions just about the function of the interest group, Tadwig, any of it? Cool. Just wanted to
Thoughts.
check.
Sure. Okay. Mineralogy extension. So where is it and what are we doing? I will say, and I've tried to put this in a slide sort of last minute, but there actually is a symposium for Earth Sciences at Tadwig, 2026 that has to deal with Earth Sciences data, totally exclusive to it. So if there's something you want to present, we're accepting abstracts. It's not closed. And I think I've gotten 4 that said they're going to. We'll see how it all pans out. But if you would like to submit one and do a presentation, we are more than happy to have you along the way. There will also be a session for digitizing Earth science data that's in concert with another project that I'll get to in just a bit. But start with the mineralogy extension. So mineralogy extension, it's not a traditional extension as like Humboldt core or chronometric age. It's a multi-component part of it. There are 4 main components. There are new Darwin core terms. There are the traditional extension terms. There is one chronometric age term. And then there is, there's some vocabularies that are coming along the way. And I'll get to those in a second. So what we're doing is we're rolling this out in phases. So there is a repo, and you can see, if you go to documentation pages, you'll see all the terms we selected. And then what we've decided to do is put these in phases. And so about 12, I think, were approved the last Darwin core phase, and then the next one will be some more, the next one will be some more. Just sort of this iterative approach to doing this kind of stuff to make sure everything is in alignment with Darwin core DP and Darwin core and that kind of thing. We think this is a better way of handling things, especially since we have terms in different places. But they're all there. They're being tracked. The proposals are up there, and then we'll get through as we go. There's one term we do have to change: treatments. Sensitive species beat me to it. They're using treatments, so we have to change the term because they win. They got it out before we could. So they're not, the mineralogy talks still need to be updated a little bit, but they're coming. And there's also a specification so you can read about how things work and the way it's intended and things like that. All right. So material entity type. This is good. You want to start this, Polly? Then we'll circle back to.
Yeah, Erica can
Okay.
also jump in
Cool.
wherever. So just as a transition into work of the interest group, this is stuff we haven't done with the interest group yet, but we're proposing it to all of you today as something that we think is very applicable for the interest group to work on together. So there's a newer Darwin core term, new as of last year, right?
Yes, that's right.
For material entity type. And then of course there's the work that's been ongoing for the last few years and in review right now of the new Darwin core data package, which reorients the data model around a material class and might change how we would be mapping our records if you're coming from a natural history collection, a paleo collection, or a geology collection, and how you might map that data to Darwin core. And by having that material class and this new term of material entity type and the parent term to that material entity category, we have new ways of sharing what the record is referring to.
Excellent.
Erica, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that was perfect.
Okay. And importantly, Erica and I made some of these slides, but we are actually addressing both what would be the fossilized category as shown in this slide under material entity category, and then some of the other geology concepts which Ben has been working on. I don't know what the material entity category for that is.
What do you mean?
Where we have fossilized here, what is... Okay, we can move on because that's not important for this conversation. Next slide, please.
Sure.
So to get us started, why we are focused on this term, material entity type, it does potentially replace or work alongside the previous term of basis of record. And it gives us a more granular way of explaining what that record is referring to. And we have gone through a few conversations with a few different groups to help figure out what the vocabulary for material entity type should be. Right now, the suggested vocabulary is quite limited. So in order to think about what terms we might want to have in a vocabulary for this term, we've got a couple use cases for how it could be used both in our published data and within internal workflows if you are coming from like a collection or other entities that might be implementing this within your own local database. So for example, one that we've thought of quite a bit at the institution I'm at is when you are working in collections, if you have a more granular term to describe what the material is, it might help inform workflows like imaging processes or physical organization. That will make more sense once we show some example terms. And then importantly, when we're publishing our data and we're trying to promote better discoverability and use, researchers should be able to better understand what material they are interested in and would be appropriate for their research projects based on the vocabulary we might use in this term. So in this slide, we've got a few different Darwin core terms, Latimer core terms, and a floating term in purple that are all different ways of describing what a fossil is or what a other material sample might be that you're publishing in Darwin core. So the two new ones that we're talking about are material entity category and material entity type. We have the existing term of preparation, which has been used for a wide variety of things. If you ever look at the number of unique values published to GBIF, it's extensive. And there's been a lot of conversations to try to refine preparations, but for a long time, it's been one of the few fields, the few terms to put any kind of descriptive information about what a record is about. So it kind of holds many different types of data. There's, of course, being able to say how many of something you have and what that count represents. The taxa is the easiest description of a specimen that anybody has. Not easiest, but like most straightforward and well known. The one we don't have but comes up in the fossil world a lot is something to describe the morphology or the anatomical element present for a specimen that's represented in a record. So do you have a skull or do you have a femur? Because almost often we don't have complete individuals or we have many parts of individuals. And then in Latimer core, there's two terms that also help to describe what an entity, what a specimen or material is, and those are preservation method and preservation mode. But I think importantly here is to keep in mind preparations isn't clean. Quantity doesn't tell all the information you need on its own, and neither is the taxon. And we do not have morphology yet, and the Latimer core ones are not used when you're publishing individual specimen records. So we're really relying on just a few terms to help someone understand what a record represents. Okay, next slide, please. And to hammer that home, here's two different objects that are fossil insects. They're single, each one is one object. They both represent fossil insects of many taxa and many individuals. But if you imagine how you might map your data to Darwin Core right now, there's not actually a way to clearly distinguish between these two objects in the data. You would not know that one is a piece of amber and one is a slab. And you can imagine how, going back to the use cases, that might impact digitization workflows, organizational workflows, research needs, etc.
So the compound model, I know all of you have heard me talk about this quite a bit, so I'm just going to skip over this pretty much. But this is where material insight falls into it. So you have parts of a compound specimen in each one of these things. So it was one type per part, but now it's going to be multiple because of ores, and it's just ores are a pain. But so you can have multiple part types. You can be because yeah. So, but this is where this vocabulary falls into it, right? This is how it fits within this compound model, and there is support for the compound model that's coming in the latest edition of Darwin Core and Darwin Core DP with the is part of material entity ID. Whoops, let's go back. You have material entity ID. This is a really, basic sort of example. This is the one. It has no parents. These two have, the parent is the compound specimen. And so you just infer it. This is a really simplified view of it. And so these two are parts of this particular object. So you actually can't do these self joins now. It's still limited in a sense. There's only, with the flat Darwin core file, there's obviously, the thing like Holly just showed and some other things that we'd like to do. But it does work now. You actually can have parts, which is a big step forward for sure. And speaking of material, types, I'm going to move this up.
Ben, I have a quick question. Can you nest them? Like, could you, or does the parent have to be a compound specimen?
No, you can have parts of parts.
So at that point, what is the purpose of compound specimen itself?
You can have parts of parts. Because,
an Albany schist is a rock, right? And now you have, it's sort of, do you see what I'm saying?
I know. So,
okay.
Because, yeah. So rocks are, here's the thing. In the scope of a collection, I don't think anybody's going to want to characterize their granite by the individual quartz grains. You know what I mean? I think there's a limit here, right? And so you can have parts of parts, and that comes up a lot. People ask for this. I have a hard time seeing how that's going to be used all that often, right? I think just getting this part is good because you can break down to elements if you want to. You can just keep on down to like individual, cations, anions, want to, but I don't think that's going to happen. But it still allows you to characterize parts of parts, which I think is good. You know what I mean? You can just run away with it if you want to. So I will show this. So this is a vocabulary site I just launched, redid it. There is geological specimen material type. It is a vocabulary. There are only one child of fossil, which is trace fossil. It would be awesome if this was built out more, different types of fossils. I'm not the person to do that. I can do the other ones, but not this one. But I did go with trace fossil. I think that's a pretty obvious one. But as for materials, some of these things, like a meteorite really is a rock just from space. It really is. But in fact, some meteorites are indistinguishable from terrestrial rocks if you look at them under a microscope. But in collections, meteorites are typically housed separately from mineralogy and rock collections. And it's under astromaterials at NASA, that's what they call it. And so we put them over here with sample return missions, which is good. And then minerals, obviously gemstone synthetic, ores are just ores, rocks, rock core, unconsolidated material, because you might have gravel or something in your collection. But this is good. And this is up now on the web. You can see it. Feedback is more than welcome for it. These terms, part of this, these correspond to terms in the mineralogy extension. It is not meant to be any kind of restriction or anything, but we figured, hey, we have all these vocabularies. We're putting out these terms. How about we release a set of values to go along with them? So, hey, if you're thinking about this term, here's something we recommend. Like hazard type is one of them. And hazard type actually applies things to botany and things in this. So we came up with a 6-value vocabulary for hazard types. And input is more than welcome. So, and this, you might find a few errors in the site. I literally just got it up and there's still some bugs. Like agents does nothing. That's a problem. It should be agents, but it's up. And so proportions, and you've got name types, formal name, alternate name, aggregate form, which I just launched. It's a whole lot of mineralogy things and hazard types. So it also has a glossary too. So welcome to explore that kind of stuff. So, and I need more terms. So if there's things you disagree with, things you like, if you use it, let me know. Oh,
We have a document to show for the fossil material entity types also.
awesome. Let's go back to the presentation. And sorry for rainbow. This is
Well,
my
I'm
5th working session today.
I might share here. We're gonna share this link with everybody anyway. Can
Okay.
you pull that up?
Yes, again. Awesome.
Erica, since you made this very beautiful document, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, so um Holly hasn't quite mentioned the Paleo Data Working Group, but I think everyone in this meeting is fully aware of what that is. That group of folks has been working on talking about the equivalent of what Ben just showed, but for paleo. So the level below fossilized, how do we describe what a fossil is? Proposing a controlled vocabulary for that. And this Google Doc is our current iteration of this is what we think might be a good starting place. Now we'd like a lot of feedback from the community. And so where Ben is scrolling right now, these are the proposed controlled vocabulary values, like amber, isolated fossil, and we would really love constructively critical feedback from everyone here and everyone who's not here on if you think these terms are too broad, too narrow, do they cover the scope of what kind of fossil specimens we'd want to describe or be able to describe in published data. I will say that like when we've talked about this in the Paleo Data Working Group, it's become clear to us that this material entity type term is kind of like it really it's a bit of a synthesis between a bunch of other information. It's not really like it's hard to define it as like it's this one narrow thing. Like there's sometimes the preparation is actually really important to knowing what type of fossil you have. Sometimes the preservation is. So we're kind of trying to walk a balance with that. But this doc should be set with permissions for anyone to suggest edits or comment. And that is how we would love to receive feedback.
Ben, can you scroll up to
Sure.
where it says fossil? Yep, right there. That's good. Thank you.
Sure.
I was gonna explain the structure. I wasn't trying to stop you though, if you were not done.
No.
Okay.
Ruby or no, I'm good.
So following up on what Erica was just explaining, part of the nuance of this that we've also been trying to figure out is how granular do we actually need to be in these terms and what is useful, what is actually needed to be specific enough, but not too specific because you can go pretty crazy with like so many different terms that you could come up with for material entity type. So what we think is likely going to be needed is a two-tier hierarchy for the vocabulary for this term. So the way the document is structured is there's a tier 1. That is what we feel most solid about after all the work that we've done in conversations with various groups. So it, as shown here on the screen, is bulk sample would be a tier 1, fossil and matrix would be a tier 1. And so those are meant to be a bit broad and also help with any legacy data updates that you might be doing. So you might not know specifically anything more specific, but it should be able to help you start getting some labels on specimens that you're publishing data on. And then there's some narrower concepts that would be in that second tier in the hierarchy. And those we foresee those being a little less formalized, but still suggested, and that there's probably going to be a lot more terms that somebody might want to use at that second level. I think it would be helpful to go through the level ones.
Sure. So bulk, these guys bulk, fossil matrix, and then
Yeah.
these guys.
So, yeah. So bulk fossil sample, fossil and matrix, amber, isolated fossil, stratigraphic fossil sample, and trace fossil. And then you can keep going. Natural cast or mold, fossil mount, and replica. Which we're happy to talk about these in more in any more detail right now if you would like. We have time.
And kind of bigger picture, or I'll just throw this out there, but we don't have to go in this direction yet. Since you are here with us today, if you have any like big picture thoughts on this idea of proposing a controlled vocabulary, would love to hear that too. Sorry, Ben, take it away.
This is definitely different than the geologic material one because those are all stem from what a geologic material is, and like it's a bit like a fossil type, okay, which is super important and super useful. But I've been wondering about it. It's definitely different than the material type, and the one how I'm using it for that bigger, broader sort of category, right? Which is cool because a bulk fossil sample is like fossil matrix is still a fossil. You know what I mean?
Go for it, John.
So one thing that I've been thinking about a lot because it's come up more than one time, and this seems like yet another time for it to come up, is the subject of hierarchical control vocabularies. Another example where this is current and a problem that people want to solve is in biome, which exists as an ontology that is hierarchical already. But we don't really have any hierarchical vocabularies in use that I know of in Darwin Core. So I think the writing is on the wall that we need to be able to support them, and we need to figure out how we will use them. The other thing is that in Darwin Core Data Package, you have this material entity type. But there is another term created automatically as well, called the material entity type in the Darwin Core IRI namespace, which can point directly to, must point to an IRI. So those two things are available. And then there's another pattern that we already have in Darwin Core Data Package, but not for any of the type vocabularies like this one would be. The pattern sits in assertions. And the idea there was that there would be so many different kinds of assertions that it would be good to allow people to say what the value of the thing they were asserting was, and also to be able to say what vocabulary it comes from, so that you and your vocabulary could participate just alongside anybody else and their vocabulary, and you would be able to use that reference to the vocabulary to actually understand what the value means. You can go there and look it up. So that alternative way of designating your control vocabularies with a way to look them up where the lookup method isn't via an IRI. It's in some printed document or it's on the web. There's no dereferenceable links to them or anything like that, but at least you can go, a human could go there and read what the thing means. So that pattern already exists. In an earlier iteration of what we were calling the unified model at that point, we had that pattern repeated everywhere. Anything that was a controlled vocabulary also had an attending term that was, where is that vocabulary defined? but that got to be so onerous, so many new terms everywhere that we said, okay, hold off. We don't actually have people with these hierarchical control vocabularies yet. When the time comes, we'll figure it out and we'll do it right and we'll do it the same for everything. I think we're getting close to that time already.
Yeah, so we have, I think there are 19 terms in the mineralogy extension that did not get proposed because they are super important for mineralogy, but on the grand scheme of things, very small. There are only so many, right? And so it's an interesting case. Like they are very distinct for mineralogy, but it's on the grand scheme of things, it's hard to argue they should be terms in Darwin Core. They're just, there's so many terms. And so that's where we sort of bend all these things together as material assertions, just so the idea would be at least that if you're going to use them, that they'll always call twinning, because you can call twinning description, twinning law. They'll use the same thing every time they use twinning. So it's like a vocabulary that you can serve them. So at least there's some control where measurement or fact is sort of like they can kind of define as they want to. But here, there's a happy median where you still have the flexibility, but then you still have some control over the terms that people are using for the particular things. John?
So the other gotcha that I anticipate is for vocabularies that lend themselves to being hierarchical, but have a problem where there are multiple hierarchies within them. So one child could be a member of many different parents, depending on how you did it. And that's going to be a challenge. So one thing to look at in your narrower and broader concepts here is whether that is likely to happen in the direction you're going. If you can avoid it, I think it will be much better.
Please avoid polyhierarchies.
Yeah.
They're nightmares to deal with. The BGS rock classification schema has multiple parents, and just that little change from a child can have more than one parent just becomes a whole, mess of things.
That ended up being part of why some things appear as a level 1 instead of being a level 2, because it would have caused that problem.
Mhm.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Sure.
Anything else?
I do think it would be helpful to walk through a use case if you are willing to share, Lindsay. And we could stop. I think we could stop screen sharing too, because I think people can look at the doc and their own.
Got it. Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm hiding back here with my DayQuil. So some of you were at the happy hour last week that group from University of California, Riverside presented on. This is in the Paleo Data Working Group, and they were presenting kind of like a cataloging conundrum where they have these giant bedding planes that they're documenting fossils from in Australia. And just having this conversation, I was thinking about them like that would be the use case they put in the chat. Like, how would they potentially apply this control vocabulary to a situation like that? Just like kind of to, I don't know, as one example, there are many out there, but I have that fresh on the brain because they were talking to us recently.
I do kind of think that that brings up for me one of the whys for why to make a controlled vocabulary for this term is more on the physical collections management side of things. Like we can describe in like concepts data about a specimen in a lot of different ways, but we also need to consider the physical side of like, could you loan this, or can I put this on exhibit? And that like that becomes a little bit of an edge case for Darwin Core, but not in the loaning sense, not in the sense that like researchers are finding that specimens exist because they're on GBIF and they might want to see the physical thing. So I think the like bedding plane example is a good one, because something that we feel you should be able to know from looking at these controlled vocabulary values is like, how big is this thing? Or like what physical object can I expect to find?
An in situ option may not be, all that bad. we talk about that problem a lot in the Paleo Data Working Group, how, how do you handle data for something that is still physically in place somewhere that's like not in a collection or whatever, you can't loan it. But, at that point, you could have something be in situ, and if the day comes that you cut it out or it falls out of wherever it is, it becomes, a block or a slab or whatever and whatnot. But yeah, using that use case, something like in situ might not be a bad idea as like a tier 1 thing.
That is a good question too, though, of there's versions of things that have remained in situ that are observations because you don't have the sample in the collection. So then the tier with the material, is there a material entity? I guess is what I'm asking. That's a weird one. Yeah.
This is gonna end up being like a conceptual collections management, or
Yeah.
philosophical question for us. Yeah, John.
The data model allows it. It doesn't have a bias whether the thing is in a collection or not, being a material entity. And so I was thinking, perhaps you've got a chunk of that bed, but you want to say things, you have information, measurements, assertions about the bed itself that's not in your collection. That needs another material entity record in order to make those assertions. And the fact that it's not in a collection doesn't matter in terms of the model. That kind of information comes on whether you put a collection code on it. So you're not limited, for sure.
Yeah, it actually seems to work better in the new model than it did previously.
So you guys would have that where you've measured, just for example, you've got a bed, some of the stratigraphic formation. You did measurements on it. There's things on it. You took a piece of it, but there's still things you did about it for your field notes. So you'd record that and publish it as part of the data set through your collection management system, or is it? It seems a long journey to. You could, I guess, is the question. But
Yeah,
how would that work?
we've got a few different use cases of versions of that.
Yeah.
One of them is we have a 3D model for something that is still in the ground and will never be collected.
Like a voucher sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have other material where the majority of the skeletal elements were collected, but there was a part that was like just too big and falling apart and not worth trying to collect. But we have the record for the analysis of that object.
But that wouldn't get a catalog number or anything, right? It would just be sort of a.
That's a good question.
I think where things are going to fall apart are at our collections management system level.
Yeah.
Like the data
Yeah.
model for publishing now is like solves a lot of problems, but there's still a problem at home.
Yeah.
It's one of those cases you break up. They're just like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
But as we move towards a world of being able to have more dynamic relationships between things, you can more easily, so you could feasibly, the manager of that thing that never was collected, like the site could have a record for it, and then we could have a record for it, and you could note that they're the same in an ideal world.
We tried to do that, yeah, and it's Wikidata is problematic, as you can imagine. It's a bit.
And the intent would be that material entity would work with other fields to give you a complete picture of what the thing is. Because I'm thinking of like the peels for the ichnofossils, the casts, the 3D models, even, to have the multiple, because like right now, everything's just getting dumped into preparations in general. So yeah, it gives us a better way of dividing up what data goes into what field to give us that view of the photo. Or view of the photo, God, view of the specimen.
Yeah, another good example. So the existing suggested vocabulary for material entity type for fossils is like macrofossil, microfossil. I don't remember the rest, but those are like
Mesofossil.
the
It was
main ones.
mesofossil.
Yeah. And when we had the previous conversation, microfossil in particular, a lot of people are like, that doesn't actually tell me much because the taxonomy already kind of lets you know it's likely a microfossil. What they really needed to know was what form that microfossil is in. So is it an isolated, so you could imagine you could have the bulk sample thing is very helpful in this case because that's very common in the micro collections. If you had a microfossil mounted on a slide, then you would have it's an isolated fossil, but its prep is the slide.
The examples for material entity type, they need to change. They were merged, they were debated, we merged things together, we got it.
That's what we're
I
working
know
on.
we definitely need to change those things for sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of it. Yeah.
I mean, we did
Well,
think this was like a 30-minute conversation a year and a half ago, and then look where we are now. We just thought, let's change the examples, and then.
I know you guys asked me to be like, what's a mesofossil? Dude, I don't know. I got the term out there. It's in there. We can change it. Tell me. It's fine.
I don't think we know either.
That was the problem. But yeah, I think our goal is to update this examples with at least some of our list and then have the full list.
For sure.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I guess now that I've scrolled through the list a bit, I did see that like fossil mount and replica were on the bottom of that, and that gets it almost into like that double, categorizing of like it's an isolated fossil, that's a replica. But yeah, that's where if we had those other fields ready for it, you get to specify that into other fields more helpfully.
I'm gonna move us to the next section because it won't take long, and if we have more time at the end, we can keep talking about this. But really, our ask is for you to review this document. We'll probably continue to have conversations about it, although our goal is to, did we decide this? I think our goal is to try to have a pretty solid list of terms by Tadwig at the end of September. If not before then, so that we can start really using it and update the examples on the quick reference guide.
Yes.
Okay. Ben, can you go back to the slides, please?
Absolutely.
Yes. I will do a better job of remembering to email everybody. I think all of you will know the next couple of things, so we'll go quickly through them.
There we go.
So like we said, this meeting and other meetings of ESP are quite often a forum for sharing updates on related efforts so that the broader community knows what's happening in parallel to the work that they're doing. These are just some of the groups that we've had updates from before, not that we have today. But some of those parallel efforts, if you're interested to look into, we will talk about two of them though, if you will go to the next slide.
I've got one too at the end. Figured before.
As most of you know, we have something called the Paleo Data Working Group. It's a community of practice concerned with developing improved data practices like implementation of Darwin Core in paleontology collections. Most of you participate in that already. We really appreciate all of your input and contribution. And if anybody else is interested in joining us, you're always welcome. It's meant to be a low stakes participation. You can come and go as you have time or interest. Can you go to the next slide, please?
It is a very good group. If you're not, it really is. It's a model for a lot of these things. They're very good. They're nice people. You really should join. I enjoy it very much. I'm not a fossil person. It is very good.
Thanks, Ben.
Sure.
So how can you participate? We have what we call happy hour every other week on Thursdays at 12 Eastern. I don't know what that is in UTC because I can't do time math today. And we also have a very active Slack space, which you can join. Just message us and we'll send you the invite. The other thing we're building out as part of this, and the next thing that I'll talk about, is this paleodata.github.io, which has become a Paleo Data Knowledge Hub and will be a home for resources for providing shared practices, guidance, tutorials, how-tos about paleo data, including possibly where we will share more about this vocabulary once we have it.
Can I ask something real quick, John?
Yep.
About this vocabulary. So you have the material, geologic material type one, right? Then you have like the fossil type one. Is the idea that the material category would be that top level sort of fossil rock and mineral, and then material entity type would be more the one that's more granular for like fossil type? Is that the general idea behind those things?
The general idea is that the category will be very well controlled.
Okay.
And the other idea about it is that it will cover a bunch of existing use cases that we don't want to lose.
Okay.
We have a basis of record that is fossil specimen.
Yeah.
Without a basis of record, we had no way to look up a fossil specimen.
Right.
Without this category and allowing a fossil to be one of those values. So that was the idea. That it won't expand unless, unless there's huge demand for it.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of driver of that work and to help move forward some of the stuff coming out of the Paleo Data Working Group is this NSF Open Science Ecosystem Project that Erica, Lindsay, myself, Adam, Amanda are all part of, and Alex. And Ben has contributed, so like half the people in the meeting right now. If you go to the next slide, you will see everybody's names listed. And this project is really aiming to look at how we can provide requirements and recommendations for improving the global data ecosystem to better support fossil data. So something like this conversation around material entity type is very related to that. Implementation of Darwin Core very related to that. And importantly, two things we're focusing a lot on is improving support for fossil taxonomy and reconciliation of terms for stratigraphic data. Okay. Does anybody have other projects that they would like to briefly share about in our last few minutes? Or questions? You can stop sharing now, Ben. Thank you.
Okay. I've got one. So the question of a geo portal comes up quite a bit. So GeoCase now resides at CTF. They're not maintaining EFG though. And so they're trying to figure out their fit. On Tuesday, we had the kickoff meeting for a geo portal out of Switzerland. And I'm on that project. And so that's going to has to be done this year. It's not going to be a full-fledged portal. It has to be a proof of concept because of funding constraints and time constraints, things like this. But it's going that direction. And part of that, it will be based on Darwin Core. So as these terms roll out, immediately they get rolled out. They're going to make it over to the Swiss data portal, just kind of as things go along, right? So that is coming. And the idea is to have that where that can be adopted sort of more internationally. Because I know the question of GBIF comes up. It's hard. It's a hard ask, right? To like do mineral searching on GBIF. It just is a hard ask, regardless. Even if they were fully on board and everything's great, it's like, that's a lot. It's just not it's not really geared for that, right? And so there are some things coming up. So things are moving. And GeoCase, I'm not really sure what the plan is quite yet on that. They were a candidate for the Swiss geo portal, but they passed and they decided to go with a custom sort of in-house portal built by a company out of Bern. And so we'll see what happens. That's all. And the acronym is GeoDagi, which is must sound good in German, but I don't.
What did you
GeoDagi.
say? The
GeoDagi.
acronym is what?
GODAGI. I do not quite understand. They mostly all German. There's some sort of hard acronyms. Then it sounds great. Like, really, guys? GeoDagi? All right. We'll go with it. That's all I got.
Anything else? It's always nice to end 5 minutes early. We'll send out the links. Thanks for attending. Please tell us all your thoughts about material entity types. We're happy to talk about it for hours more. Erica's gone, but maybe she won't want to do that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to end it. Thanks, guys.